Hey everyone, welcome to part 8 of the McLaren, or Tamiya McLaren 120th scale M23 James Hunt 1976 F1 car that won the championship that year. And last time I left you, had shown you how I got the engine all painted up, some of the details or the bolts and such picked out on the top of the engine. And in this video today, we're going to start detailing the engine a little bit. We're going to do the engine in this video, and then we're going to start doing some work on the transmission in the next video, or maybe at the end of this one, depending on how long it takes here. So what I've done so far, I've moved ahead because I'm not going to show you every single thing I do, first of all, because I want to keep the videos at the 15 to 20 minute minimum that we discussed. It's a lot easier for me that way. And I just don't want to bore you guys with random stuff that I'm doing here at the bench and you don't understand what it is without me sitting there explaining it. It's going to make it a lengthy video no matter what. So anyways, what I've done is started to add the plug wires and the fuel injection wires to the engine. Now the plug wires in the kit actually come in the kit. They're in the actual part of the detail that Tamiya gives you in the actual kit itself. Small, detail, black detail wire they give you, and they give you a distributor in the front there that's got 2 slots in each side, and you cut this wire to about a 90 millimeter length, 4 of them, and then you just bend them in half, and you slide the 4 on one side into one slot and into the other, and voila, you have ignition wires. So that's already been done and put in place. The fuel injection lines that you see here, these clear lines, they do not come in the kit, folks. So you're going to have to add those. And it adds a big amount of detail, and it's something that is overlooked in the 120th kit. I think in their 112th kits they give you injection lines. I think the tubing even that they're using there is a little bit too big or out of scale. So I looked around trying to figure out what can I find that's the right scale to do fuel injection lines for the M23. And you'll be surprised. Any of you out there have probably discovered this yourselves. If you go to Hobby Lobby or a Michaels, in this case I went to a Michaels and found this stuff called Stretch Magic. And it's a 0.5 millimeter clear bead and jewelry cord. You'd be amazed at what you can find in those sections that will apply or can be applied to detailing for models. So you'll see me call out other craft pieces that I use. Crimp tubes is another piece that I love to use that you can find right in the bead section as well at Michaels or Hobby Lobby. So this is great stuff. And what I did is I cut out 8 pieces, and I just did them to a random length, fairly long, so I can cut them to size. And I bunched them all together, drilled a hole in the end of the receptacle down there on the kit, and simply glued them in place, all of them in a bunch, and kicked it with some zip kicker. I used some of my Bob Smith Industry Insecure here with my quick setting zip or kicker here that makes the cyanacrylate glue cure instantly. So very, very cool stuff. If you need small little lines, it's the way to go. Now, the problem I had was, since it's not a tubing, there's no hollow end on it, I wasn't able to create or be able to kind of slide that over the receptacle that actually they give you in the injection pedestals here, little pointy plastic receptacles. So what I did is I used shrink tubing. Now, some of you may ask, well, Dave, what is shrink tubing? Okay, well, shrink tubing is real popular in the MotoGP bike building category of model building. And it's made by a company, you can get a lot of different sizes and colors from a company called Top Studio. I'll put the link in the description below to topstudiohobby.com. And you can't buy it off that website. Johnson Tang is the creator, and he's one heck of a modeler himself. But he created this in a lot of his detail kits, but he also gives you this stuff you can buy. You can buy blue, you can buy black. I just happen to use blue because it was the right diameter to stretch out. And you literally take this stuff and you heat it up with you carefully just run it across. A little bit of heat, you don't need a lot. You let it sit for a second, and then you just pull on it. And you can stretch it right out to the diameter you need. And then I cut it out, and this is what I ended up with. is this stuff here. So what I did is I cut small little tiny pieces of this and super glued those to the end of the nibs on each one of the fuel injection lines. These are not glued on yet. You know, the actual receptacles are and everything, but the actual rails themselves are not glued. They come right off. So I wanted you to see how it's going to look all together. Now what I'm going to do is carefully take some testers, lacquer, silver, and I'm going to go ahead and paint those pieces with this silver right here. And then when I get done painting them with the silver, we'll come back on the video and I'll go ahead and route all these and show you in the video how I get these carefully routed. And then we're going to put a nice light coat of Tamiya clear orange over these fuel injection lines to give them a little bit of patina to make them look like they've been, you know, they've had fuel staining them and going through them. It's a real neat, nifty little trick you can do. So I'll be back in the video in a minute with everything all glued, those parts painted. I mean, I don't need to video me painting these pieces. It's pretty straightforward with a brush. And then I'll glue them in place, and then I'll video routing these lines so you see how it's done. So we'll see you in a bit. Okay, so the injection lines are in place, everyone. Pain in the butt, but hey, it's worth it, right? The last thing I want to do to these parts in the video is add a little bit of patina or usage wear to the fuel lines themselves. Most of the fuel lines on F1 cars, old, not so old, doesn't matter, when they were still using clear tubing for the fuel, was that they would stain those clear tubing lines. The fuel itself would stain them like an orangish, I don't know, orangish like yellowish color. I like to use Tamiya clear orange. And what you need to do is just, you don't have to do the entire lines. It's pretty impossible to do that once they're in here in place. But you can add a little bit of this clear orange to certain little aspects of the lines themselves, and it will basically light up the whole line with that orange color. And it just adds so much realism to the actual, piece itself. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not doing it everywhere. I'm just doing it on certain areas that would look that it's going to show up on. You don't have to do every single square inch or millimeter in this case of the lines themselves. You just want to get it looking like the fuel is going through the whole line, and the reflection of the clear orange will pretty much illuminate the whole line because it's clear. And that's what you're after, is that look. So these lines were a pain. They were a pain to put in place and get them to stay in place. They're kind of springy. That's the only drawback of using that beading wire or that beading necklace stretch tube that I told you about. But it does a nice job, and it really gives it a nice look. So there's the end result. Once again, those lines are not included in the kit. You have to add those. So that's what I did. So my next step is to put the chrome velocity stack assemblies on and finish up the rest of the engine. There's a couple decals I got to put on it. You'll see the finished result when I do the next video with the engine. And what we're going to do next, but we're going to start it now because I want to give you guys an idea of how to do this, is we're going to start detailing out the transmission a little bit and then attach the rear suspension to the transmission and such. Lots of neat stuff to do. But before I leave you today, I want to show you what I did to add some depth or some character to the actual transmission. Now, again, this was painted with Mission Models gunmetal. You saw it in the last video, this stuff right here. It's beautiful paint, but it lacks character if you just leave it a solid color. The real transmission would have had wear, like lighter colored silver wear marks on the raised surfaces and all that. So again, that's a look you can get easily, everyone, by dry brushing. And that's what I did with the transmission. And what you do is you take I usually do use a flat bristle brush, such as this, okay? And I take my paint. In this case, I'm going to use the Model Master Lacquer Silver, one of my favorite go-to silvers in the world, and dip that in there, and you basically wipe off most of the paint. And then you use the pressure of your brush to basically distribute only what you want over those areas. And this gives you such a nice look. Again, it's called dry brushing if you haven't tried it. And all the raised surfaces will catch that silver paint, but the lower surfaces won't if you do it right. You don't want to overdo it. If you put too much paint or you don't take enough paint off, it doesn't look right. So I'm just doing this lightly. I've actually already done it, but I wanted to show you how it works. So there you go. Check that out. So that's the look I was after. You've got the nice dark gunmetal shadows in the lower crevices, but then you've got that highlight with the silver in the upper. And that's dry brushing, everyone. That's the dry brush technique. A lot of people use it. It works really, really well. Let's just kind of mate this up to the transmission, or up to the engine, just to see how it's going to look. Because this is going to be such a cool piece. And this, again, it's what I love about old F1 cars, is the engines are so exposed. So the possibilities are endless here. So there you are. There's my engine so far. It's really starting to look like something, isn't it? I mean, all I've done is add plug wires, and I've added the injection lines. Next is the velocity stacks on top, and then the engine is essentially done, and I can move on to the transmission, rear suspension, and we can start detailing that out. I am going to be adding some braided lines to this shortly, or on the next video, or a couple videos away, and I'll be talking about those products as well that I'll be using on this when I get to it. So anyways, that's going to end this video. Once again, baby steps, but hopefully nice, explained, detailed explanations of those baby steps. So again, please hit the subscribe button, like the videos, ring the bell so you see notifications come up when I do future videos, and I thank you very much for supporting me. Take care.